It says it right underneath it. So with that, I see that we're live.
Yes,
I see Dal Grimm joined us. And I see Michael Vasquez is still having some audio problems. So with that, we're going to start the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm one of your co-hosts and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation, Frank Deaf as Opposed Johnson. To my right is Michael Marshall. He's our constitutional scholar and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. Below us is Dal Grimm, who's our bearded wonder. Look at that thing. Look at that thing.
The window licker.
God, he's like
window licker.
Looks like Santa, looking like Santa Claus. And Michael Vasquez, the dragon of the Southern Tier, New York's only true independent journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We have a full house tonight. Finally, we seem to be back at full power, even though we're working with a brand new streaming service that we're trying to find all the kinks and bells and whistles on. So bear with us. We might have a couple of hiccups.
Well, now people that are watching us on different platforms will, we actually have live chat. So no matter who's chatting, what platform they're chatting on, it'll show up on the live chat on our feed.
Nice.
So everybody's going to be able to see the entire conversation, not just what's in their chat for the platform that they're on.
Well, there can't be as many hiccups and bells and whistles as what happened to Grok yesterday. So I think we'll be pretty good. That was impressive.
So yeah, this will be it'll be interesting to see how this platform works. We are, like I said, we are just figuring it out, so it will take some time to get things set up and operating the way it should be.
Well, I can hear Voss okay. Can you guys hear Voss okay?
Yeah.
No, I don't hear him at all.
I hear Vass perfectly, and his microphone button is off.
Yeah, it says you're muted.
That's weird, but okay, fine.
Now I can hear you.
Weird.
Okay, but
just a little
I was
strange.
looking at something else. No, it's the audio. It's messing with my computer. I can barely hear anything.
Huh. That's weird.
Well, we should have one of them little subtitle guys come in and scream from the. I wonder if that guy from the Nigerian consulate is available. The guy who just did this for like 2 hours in every broadcast. Maybe that'll help a little bit. All right. So before we get started on this thing, I was already yelled at earlier today that the only thing I'm going to be yelling about is the Epstein client list. And I think with good reason to be yelling about the Epstein client list. But before I get into
I said it.
Yeah, before I get into the tirade that I plan on going off into, has been going. Marshall, you have been vacant for quite some while. I know you've been putting in the hours, sitting up on a mountaintop. Usually, you're up there on the mountains in a snow-filled truck, handling communications that keep Western civilization afloat. How the hell have you been? We haven't seen you in a while.
Extremely busy. I haven't been able to keep up on anything because I've been putting in literally tons of hours right now. So
hopefully that means you're making bank.
Not a lot going on in my life.
No. Hopefully that means you're making bank.
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
All right, well that's something.
Yeah, Well, pay is always a good thing, but
it actually, because of it, it helped us extend our website, keep our email going, and allowed us to continue being able to do these live streams.
Yeah, because everybody knows I'm broke as shit. No, I'm not broke as shit. It's just going back to a 9 to 5, which is not really a 9 to 5 for me, has been murderous because my hours are all over the place. And when you work for a big retail outlet, the hours are insane, but it's so unpredictable. You never know from one day to the next what's going to happen, what you're going to bring in, and everything. And it's been a little rough. And we've been kicking around the idea of doing something that we've never done before, and that is to bring in a couple of sponsors. Now, we've all been approached about having a couple of different companies that want to come in and sponsor the show, but we've always been reluctant to do so because we always try to keep our reputation as being that we don't have a shill for anybody. We don't ever, try to, promote or promise anything that we don't know for a fact is valid. Well, been reaching out this week, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be introducing you to a couple of those sponsors that we've gotten, and they're going to be products that we've already done long-term testing for on the Range Report. And this is stuff that was done long before the idea or the concept of getting sponsorship was available. And these are products that I've already beat the living hell out of and try to do that. So hopefully it alleviates a little bit of pressure on right now for Michael, because he's the one that helped foot in the bill for this thing.
Well, here's go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I do have some stuff to say on this. So.
No, go ahead. The floor is yours. You've been absent.
This new platform that we're on is going to actually make it easier for people to help support the show. Okay, via super chats and other functionality. You can actually go to Streamlabs. I'll have to get the page addresses on that. But there's a place where you can go in there and actually tip us and actually watch the stream live on Streamlabs. And we are now on Twitch. We're on YouTube, as we've always been, and we're on Facebook, our Facebook page, Liberty First Foundation, and our Facebook profile page.
Cool.
And we're going to be adding some others as time goes on. Just as soon as I figure out how to do it and get those accounts set up and so forth.
Very good.
Well, I see that we are on our Facebook page. I'm in the background here perusing our other pages to see where we are, where we're not. We got to keep track of all of this stuff. But yeah, all right. So I'm gonna get into the early tirade. I'm gonna get into the early tirade now.
You want to do that instead of talking about FBC and GOA, doing what you suggested last week and actually stepping up their game to get rid of the NFA?
Well, here's all right. That's going to be the gun related topic, for later on. But this is more or less the trust topic that I'm going to talk about.
Sure.
I have everybody has always known that I've never exactly been somebody who's 100% in the Trump camp. All right. I've always had, certain disagreements with him, and stemming from a lot of Second Amendment related issues and stuff like that. And but the difference is I've always been willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I've always been willing to applaud him when he does something right. But I'm the first person to give him a critique when something is wrong. I wanted to take, instead of this whole fiasco that's going on with the Epstein list, I want to take something out of that. And that was the response that he gave while in the White House to somebody from the press pool who asked him about the Epstein list. And Pam Bondi is sitting there next to him. And he says, are people still talking about that? This is a couple of years old already. We got Texas going on. We got Iran going on. We got this going. Can't we hear something about these issues and that issue? The way the man answered the question was so completely and utterly tone deaf. I mean, because listen, this is something that was a campaign promise going back a long time. Yeah. This was going to be one of the first things that was responded to. It was going to be one of the first things that was addressed. We've got so many unanswered questions about this, and it turns out that the only three people right now that are incarcerated over what happened with Epstein Island is Ghislaine Maxwell and two corrections officers from the prison where he allegedly didn't kill himself. All right, that's it. Those are the only people that we still have no record of How many young women, how many young girls, how many young boys were trafficked to this island? We have no list of people who were on the flight logs going back and from or wherever else. We were told the list was on the desk. They made a big public fiasco, having right-wing pundits and blogosphere come to the White House and been given binders that said the Epstein file phase 1. We were told it was being reviewed. It was told we're doing this. And all of a sudden, what list? People are still talking about? Yes, people are still talking about this. This is not a matter of human interest. It's a matter of human lives. These were young girls, young women, young boys that were trafficked to God knows who, to God knows where. We have one person that had allegedly come out and presented evidence of her time in captivity on the island. She's now deceased. We have a bunch of different evidence. And for the president to come out and be so flippant, so dismissive over it. I mean, listen, I know it's not one, Mr. Trump, I know it's not one of your big accomplishments to say, oh, we're raising $300 billion through tariffs, so we're getting money coming in. It's this. We know it's not an accomplishment of yours that you can tout on the campaign trail, but it was a promise that you made to the American people that we would get to the bottom of what happened over there, that we would have some sort of information. And we, the American people, have been hit time and time and time again with investigation after investigation after investigation, where we have seen with our own eyes government officials committing perjury hundreds of times over and over again. We hear investigations where this one's guilty, that one's guilty, and no charges ever being filed. We have instances where we have hearings that go on for months, and then the next shiny object appears and nothing happens. The American people want to see something happen where we can have faith that justice still prevails in this country. And for this to happen, and to be so dismissive over what we all know the government is in their possession. We're not asking the government to release the child pornography. We're asking for the names of the people who appeared in it. We're asking for the names of the people who were at the island. We're asking for the names of the people that were on the flight logs. That's what we're asking for. And then for everybody to say, oh, there is no client list. Well, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail?
Yeah.
Why is she in jail? Because if you are now saying there was absolutely no evidence that women were trafficked to this island and that all of these things happened, then why are you imprisoning an innocent woman? Is she innocent? Is she not innocent? What evidence was used to convict her that's still not privy to the American people? What evidence was in the dossier that was used to draw up the indictment against Jeffrey Epstein that is still not privy to the American people? Because as far as I'm concerned, he was in jail awaiting a trial. There's evidence that has been sealed, kept from the American people, and we don't have any knowledge about it. And now for everybody to say, well, what list? The American people are not stupid. I mean, yeah, we have a majority of people in this country who don't follow the news, don't follow media. They go from one second to the next. They change topics like their favorite TV shows. But this was American lives that were possibly lost through this situation. Young women and young girls and young boys being raped repeatedly, held prisoner on an island that there was no escape by some of the most powerful people in the world, and we're being told by an attorney general who said the list is on my desk that there is no list. I know you're not running up for re-election, Mr. President, but somebody's going to have to step into that White House when you leave. And if you leave this stone just sitting there without turning it over and see what comes out from underneath it, you are going to throw away whatever legacy that you have, and you're going to hand control of this White House to the party that would rather see this country burn than prosper. You're going to lose the House. You're going to lose the Senate. And you're going to lose the trust of the American people because as far as anybody's going to be concerned, the new boss is the same as the old boss. And for you to ask, is anybody still talking about that? Imagine Joe Biden saying that. There would be a call to an investigation of his mental capacity. Are we going to have to call for one for you? This is disgusting. It is disgusting that we've allowed this to happen. And it's disgusting that your flippant behavior and your flippant attitude is just casting it off to the wayside. Why? So you can take credit for some other tariff thing? You can take credit for another company going to build in America? Of course companies want to build in America. We're the best country in the world. But if you break this promise to the American people, this is not about, dropping the price of a gallon of gas 10 cents. This is about human lives. This is about innocent children. Innocent children. We need to know what happened. And we need to know now. That's and I didn't curse once during that fast, so you should be happy about that.
I'm surprised.
Oh, well, you don't know. I'm very, very, very toned down right now.
No, I know that. The audience doesn't, but I know that. Yeah.
The other thing about it is the way he responded was that he was like, "Are you still talking about this guy?" Americans aren't worried about Epstein; he's dead. But what they are worried about is they're trusting of a government that was supposed to reverse course, as you said, Frank, from lying to the American people and basically gaslighting us into some sort of weird feudalism and authoritarianism to restoring the republic. This doesn't help. If the first thing that you're going to the one of the most important things that the government needs right now is trust of the people, so that they can do their job for everything else, lower the price of gas, get the food supply in order, making sure that America prospers. All that ends the moment the people believe that they cannot trust the government to fulfill the promises that were made that put them in authority in the first place. So the fact that Trump was that flippant, do I regret my vote like you sometimes see on social media right now? Is like, oh, I bet you all regret your vote. No, I don't. I know that from a principled position of wanting the freedom of exercise of unalienable rights, I have a better shot at that with Trump than ever with Kamala Harris. I know what Kamala Harris and her ilk stood for. They wanted to plunder the country. That was their plan. They had no other plan except maintain power and plunder the country and basically subjugate American citizens and turn them into slaves, along with importing a whole host of people that were going to be coming in to help them maintain that power as second-class citizens. So I knew what we were getting with Kamala Harris. I felt that, with my vote for Trump, there is a better possibility of us returning and restoring the republic to its constitutional roots. And we may still yet be able to do that. But this is not the way. Like if you need that trust, you need that currency to be able to deal with the American people so that you can actually progress, real progression, not progressiveness just for the sake of progression.
No, we need transparency.
Yeah. But that's what I mean, is that we need the transparency that breeds the trust that is the currency on which the government can do business.
Marshall, where, if any place, am I going wrong in my assessment?
There isn't any. Okay, the thing is, if the prosecutions that are there or the investigations were done for the people, like they're supposed to be done for the people, then the people should be privy to the evidence. Okay? If the prosecution doesn't proceed, then the people need to be privy to the evidence so that we can know why the prosecution didn't proceed.
Right.
If there is a prosecution then we need to be privy to the evidence as to why the person was found guilty. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. Okay, if the information is sensitive, then you put out a redacted files. Okay, that's that simple.
Anything else is going to be speculation. Like you see it all over right now. People are going back and forth because in the lack of evidence, nobody believes the official narrative that's coming out of the White House right now. So there is a vacuum of fact, and the speculation is running nuts. Like there's some speculation that it's Trump covering. It's another that Trump made a deal with the deep state, that he's got control of the lever now so that he can make them do whatever he wants.
Well, there's even rumors going around that Trump's on the list.
Right. Well, and so was just about every prominent person that was a target for Epstein's circle. And there are a bunch of people that are tied to Epstein's circle because the guy was a freaking leech.
Well,
he picked out people of influence. He picked out people with money, and that's the
Vass has been laughing at you guys. So let's find out.
No, I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing about what they're saying. In particular, like anyone in politics, anyone in entertainment, anyone who's rich that wants to say, "Oh, the Epstein circle." It's everybody. Everybody who's rich, everybody who's influential, right. Everybody who's in politics had in the 90s, early 2000s, they were all surrounded by him. They went to his parties. They've all had their photos. Elon Musk met him as well. There's photos of him and Elon as well. It's no different than with Harvey Weinstein. The same thing.
Or did he?
Okay. So for anyone to say, "Oh, it's this circle," it's everybody. The circle is everybody. It's deep and it's well entrenched. And yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors out there. The thing that's most likely is that there was a deal. A deal came about because this would have significant damage to the American government and trust and faith in the individuals in the deep state, not just the elected officials, because you can always replace them. No, we're talking about people who are in, for lack of a better name at the top of my head, lowest learners, the upper middle management deep in every institution in America. And they're some of the people who are being likely involved. And that would seriously disrupt America going forward. Now, is the deal worth it or not? I don't know. Do I think it's going to be blackmail for the next 3 years with Trump holding this over people's head? Unlikely. But, and do we ever find out who's on that list or who, more importantly, it's not an actual list. It's a list made from the data that we have, like the flight logs, like
right.
who was involved in various activities. There is a list you can compile from that, which theoretically was done. So we'll never find it.
Well, I guarantee that somewhere in that mound of evidence and data, there are financial records.
Guaranteed.
Okay. And that's what really, if we are finding out that so-and-so is paying Epstein X amount of dollars, okay, it may not say in that financial record exactly what that was for, but if we keep seeing the same names over and over and over again, paying these set amounts, then that's going to be pretty indicative that person.
That's a trap. That's a trap. You don't know why. There could be legit business. Could be.
All right. If it's
business, that's a trap to make that assumption.
Well, whichever it is, all right. Let's not forget that this is the same federal government that passed a law that wanted to track every financial transaction that we made on PayPal over $600.
Actually,
they wanted to. Well, whichever, right? But I don't suspect that the financial transaction record is going to look anything different than the bookkeeper's record from the Al Capone case. You're going to have to try and figure out whose name meant what, who did this, and all the rest of that stuff. And but when you start compiling and you start looking at, okay, this is a list of people that we know were on the flight logs. We know that there were cameras all over that island that have video of people coming in and out, and all the rest of that stuff. We know that it had to be captured. You're not going to run a private island in the middle of the Caribbean or wherever the hell this thing is and not have extensive security. You're going to have extensive security personnel. These people need to be questioned. The cameras need to be isolated. When you start looking at names, and you start looking at the numbers in the book, and granted, you can't say, well, I can't put this name with this face because the name is not the name in the book, but you can start looking deeper at filings. Sure. You can start looking. This is what investigations do. Okay, if these are business transactions, legitimate or otherwise, the money's either being laundered, which is going to have to be some sort of physical, trace of it somehow. If you're saying it's a legitimate business expense, it's going to be written down on somebody's taxes somewhere. Now you can start to correlate the list between payments received and payments made. And so, okay, well, now we look at dates. You're saying dates were paid on this day. Well, that happens to correspond with the same money that this person took out of their account on the same day that they were at the island. Now you start to build a case. And even though you can't find anything that is definitive, when you have a preponderance of the evidence that becomes so overwhelming that the only thing that it can be is that fact, you can extrapolate the truth from this thing. And now you start putting people's you can start putting people's feet to the fire. This investigation has been going on for years, and to now come out and say there's no evidence anything ever happened. The island doesn't even exist. It's not even on Google Earth. Okay. We are all going to be branded. We are all going to be branded as conspiracy theorists.
Right.
Because now this has gotten into the point where there's no evidence of a lab leak. That's where this is now. There's no evidence of a lab leak. That is the same place in the timeline that we are right now. Speculation, evidence, people using common sense and conjecture and coming up with their own formulation. You look at the timeline, you look at everything that you got, and you say, well, it has to be a lab leak because nothing else makes sense. Well, that is the same frame of reference we are in now. If we look at the two things and say, okay, look at all the evidence that's been compiled. We're at the lab leak, you're a conspiracy theorist part. How long did it take for us to get from you're a conspiracy theorist to the government finally saying it was probably a lab leak? Are we going to have to wait 2-3 administrations before something happens? Are we going to have, is this going to be another Kennedy dossier where we have to wait for every person who was there to be dead for 15 years before we're allowed to discuss it?
Well, partially, yes. And this is being used by the mainstream media. We're talking CNN, MSNBC, the big boys. They're using this to try and break MAGA. They're having parties right now. They are celebrating because they finally have a straw to break the camel's back of the America First movement and to give them some leverage against Trump. So they're going to promote every conspiracy. They're going to promote every theory out there. They're going to promote every imagination out there, especially the wilder ones that people will make up, and they will push that out there and say, and they will attack Trump and the Trump administration about that, trying their very best to shield every Democrat they can from being part of that same swamp of craziness. You know what I'm saying?
And that should be the key to everybody to understand why the list is being hidden. Because if the Democrats know and the media knows that this list isn't going to be reported because of who's on it, that means that they are now going to be able to use it as a wedge, as an attack, because their people are safe, because they're not going to release it because of the people that we don't want to admit might be on the list.
Yeah. That's probably
Okay, so now this has become the Trump has put themselves into a circular firing squad, and the only thing he can do is cut bait and let everybody hang. Let them all hang. That's the only thing that can be done, because if it's not done, because now you've given them plausible deniability. They can all wash their hands and go, no, none of us were on that list. None of the perverse.
That's what was happening before.
Right. None of the perverse lunatics on the left that have been chased out of office for sexual impropriety over the last 10 years. No, they weren't on the list. They couldn't have been on the list. You're hiding it because the Republicans are on that list. No, there aren't. Well, then show the list. They're not going to show the list because to protect themselves, they have to hang everybody else. They have to protect everybody. This is La Cosa Nostra. This is La Cosa Nostra. Okay, one person in the RICO breaks ranks and talks, they all hang down the line from it. They understand that if one person gets hung up to dry, the whole house of cards collapses, left hand and right hand. This country saw 1.3 million of its own citizens die at the hands of our own people during a civil war, and we survived it. You're going to tell us that we can't survive?
It's not just our country.
I don't care.
Well,
I don't care.
Yeah, but world politics does. I'm not justifying. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's right or good. I'm trying to understand why it's not just our politicians, because I think Trump, if it were just our politicians, yeah, I think Trump would hang them all to dry. But I think the fact that it is international, and in particular, there's strong belief that it attaches to the British royals, perhaps many of their prime minister, their prime minister and their MPs, and other nations as well, high ranks, because the damage would be international and corrupting. Yeah, but you can't throw the entire world in. The logic is you can't throw the entire world into chaos.
Listen, if the entire global political sect was involved in the raping of children, and we are going to stand there and say we have to protect them because it might hurt the world's political stance. Fuck them.
I'm not.
I know you're not justifying it. But if you're saying that that's the reason why, then you are going to say that we are, instead of having justice, are going to allow child rapists to continue to run the world because somebody else's economy might get hurt. You know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care. I honestly don't care, because if you're going to let criminals run the show, then there's no cause for freedom anywhere in the world. I don't want to hear anybody ever talk about a cause for freedom if you're going to let criminals run everything.
And
there is no freedom for anybody.
I'm sorry to say that it seems like that's the political math. And I'm not justifying. I'm trying to understand. And
what could happen
from my
if the
understanding,
royal
the
family
political math
collapses?
says the best thing to do. The political math says the best thing to do in this scenario, at least from what I'm seeing, seems to be that they said the public will forget about this within a year, if not 3 months. We will blow past it, and that preserves the geopolitical norm.
Yeah,
because otherwise the chaos is too devastating to too many critical countries, and this would be a big blowback. That's the political math I think they made.
Until somebody else's 12-year-old daughter gets absconded with out of a mall in Iowa somewhere, and they find her used up, beaten up, raped up body washed up on the shore in Bermuda somewhere, then that family is going to care. That family might care. If these politicians need to answer to their own people, let them answer to their own people. I'm sure that the United States isn't the only country that had some of their children stolen.
No.
Are we gonna sit there and say we're going to allow the slave trade to continue in other countries around the world? Well, but because it might hurt their economy.
Well, but the thing is that other countries, their people are not citizens; they are subjects. So,
well, maybe this gives them the opportunity to become citizens.
So that may be, but at the same time, by the same token, those people have been subjects for many, many, many hundreds of years. They're not going. Their culture is not going to give them the idea of freedom. And the reason I say that is because you can go to a place like Bulgaria, for example. They come out of communism, they go right into democracy, and their entire country believed that democracy was going to be a silver bullet that was going to give them prosperity, but they didn't know how to use it. This type of blowback for the collapse of foreign policy all over the globe would actually create such an instability that there would be no trade, there would be nothing. It would just be a mass riot.
Cool.
And right, in some semblance, there are people that are at a point where we don't care about that.
You know what? Listen.
We want to have the principle to be able to stand on and say, we fought for freedom and justice.
And if you're willing to trade security over freedom, you deserve and will get neither.
Yeah,
if the countries around the world decide that they want to let all of these people who are their political leaders get away with it, because that doesn't necessarily mean we have to extradite them to the United States or send them to The Hague or the World Court or to the UN so they can stand trial. If the people in Botswana want to let their prime minister get away with it, or if the people in Bulgaria want to let their guy get away with it, that's for them. And if it collapses, so be it. It's not my problem. It's not my problem. Where the chips of justice fall, that's where it is. The ramifications that come with it. I'm not going to let justice starve and let innocence die because somebody else is going to say, oh, they don't know how to adjust to it. If they don't know how to adjust to it, you know what? Follow our lead and see how we adjust to it. I've said them 100 times on this show. If you want to be like America, adopt our Constitution, adopt our way of life, adopt our laws, and become your own version of America. Now, if the royal family should happen to collapse because some prince, got stuck diddling a 12-year-old, so be it. So be it. There's another royal family waiting in line.
And well, no, but I understand your outrage. I'm not saying it's not justified or right. Politics isn't about what's right.
All right, then let's shield everybody else around the world and just hold responsible for the Americans. And let's hang these motherfuckers, Americans that.
If you take down again, I'm only looking at what is presented, and I believe that there's no way, based on the way they've done this, which I think is not only is it everything that's been done, it doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. I mean, if you're going to cover this up, it was easier to do than what they've done. If you were just going to blow past this, like if this was not going to be revealed to the public, 1,001 different ways we could have done this. Hell, we could have done this months ago, and no one would be talking about it now. They could have left it in limbo, as a matter of fact, and people would always be like, "Oh, see, but they didn't do it." You were talking about this 2 weeks ago, Frank. That they didn't do anything, and we were talking about that. But that's less of a blowback than what we're dealing with now, which makes me, looking at the political math, say that there's no way they could have extricated the other critical countries and some of the critical people in the U.S. There was no way to keep them out of it. They did the math and they said, this is the better path for some reason, possibly also with the benefit of a deal of some nature that we don't understand. It's one of the secrets of government that happen all around the world every day, including in America, that we don't hear about. I do not say that is a good thing, but that is what I am that's what I can understand. And from there, I can move forward. But and I see the comment from Dennis. Dennis says that the political blowback is coming, no doubt, and that's because the blowback is in part the same kind of rage you have right now, Frank, which is completely completely justified. There's that, and you have the political, the mainstream media, the left, the political left, that are going to take advantage of this to try and break MAGA, break the America First, so that they never have to deal with it again. They're hoping this is the straw that broke the back.
The one thing that I can kind of infer from the way this was handled is that the network is still in place. We know this because if it wasn't in place, what's the first thing that somebody does when they don't have a club held over their head anymore? They start acting differently. So right now, nothing has really changed. So that lever is still in place. Whatever it is, that lever is still in place, and it's still holding things together. So it's not that the evidence has been destroyed.
No.
My guess is that in the year from 2020 onward, there was a real movement within the bureaucratic levels to sanitize all of the evidence and remove the important bits to maintain the levers of power, and all that was left in 2024 is the child porn and whatever implicated Maxwell and Epstein. That's it. That's all that's left.
Well,
So,
as soon as Bongino came out and said, "Oh, I'm convinced it was that he hung himself," I knew it was all going south.
well, when he
I
said
knew it was all going south.
when he said it, you could tell from his So I look at a lot of nonverbal, having from my background. I used to be an actor, right? So you do a lot of interpretation through nonverbals when you're acting. There's more to the story than just the lines that you're spitting out. There's facial expressions, there's posture, there's the way you hold yourself, how you look at things, physically look at things, like looking into the camera, looking away from the camera, looking at the person you're talking to across the way from you. And his nonverbals told me that he was telling the truth. He looked at the file that he was presented with, and all it told him was that Epstein killed himself. So he's not lying when he says, I looked at the file and it definitively says he killed himself. That's what he said. That does not mean but he wasn't willing to speculate. And one of the things that he said to his audience before he even took the job was that I need to put all of the speculation and all of the things that I've talked about previously aside, because I'm now working for the public. I'm not working as a media pundit. I'm not working for myself. I am working for you, so I can only tell you what is in front of me, which is a fairly honorable thing to say. But when it comes down to it, we the people know, based on everything that the media has put out prior to this, that there was more there. And the fact that this administration has chosen not to share any of it and to close the book on it, that is a violation of the currency of trust needed to be able to have the government operate with the people's understanding that it's operating the way we want it to, the way we have demanded that it operate. And that's the problem.
Mike.
Yep.
Yeah, Marshall, jump into this conversation. Give me a take on this thing. I say let it burn.
Well, here's my thing on basically all this. Okay, if they're not willing to show us the evidence to at least absolve everything, then that means they're hiding something.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Give it.
Okay, it's very easy. You want to put this behind you? Release the evidence.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Apparently.
No, it's not going to happen because there is damning stuff in that. Okay, Now who it's damning to, that remains to be seen. But that's the problem. Okay. The only way to get rid of this is to release the evidence.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that.
Either that or start prosecuting people.
They're not going to do either of those.
I know.
I think that's very clear. I think what they do is they take the hit, possibly, and I think they factored in did the math and said, okay, Democrats take the House. If MAGA breaks, which is possible over this issue, that means Democrats break the House, which is what the Democrats want. They've been looking for something that would give them that. And now we have the House is held by Democrats. Republicans maintain the Senate, most likely. And then Trump turns into a lame duck, which was one of the fears he was facing anyway, which is why he was trying to fast track everything in the first 3 to 6 months of his term, because he was afraid he was going to get hit with something that would brick wall him. And this is now the brick wall. I think that's the way they're looking at it.
You know what one of those things he wanted to fast track was? The list.
Initially, yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the things he wanted to fast track, and he sold us out.
Maybe. And what did he get for it? Trump is very transactional. He would have, if he was going to, if he,
I don't know, maybe people he cares about are on the list and he didn't know it.
Maybe, or maybe we get a peace deal somewhere down the road. Maybe we get a bunch of trade deals down the road. Maybe we don't even know yet. I don't know. Or maybe he did just because of vanity, not because of money. He's got enough money. I don't think that would motivate him. I think it was, someone owed him a favor, or he owed somebody a favor, or a bunch of people. Don't know. There's too much speculation. There's just way too much speculation at this point.
Well, this is why Reagan used to say trust but verify.
Of course.
Now I can't trust. My trust is gone.
I never trusted him anyway.
Yeah.
My any faith I had in this administration to do anything right, and I don't mean right wing, left wing. I mean to do the right thing, to do the morally just thing, is gone.
Politicians don't do morally just things. That's
right,
and that's
but you see, that was what was supposed to make this administration different.
That was supposed to, because that was can't. And Frank, with due respect, I love you, but I look at things. This. I look at the politics. I don't look at the emotion. I don't look at the people. I look at the politics, and I know it's frustrating for a lot of people because it's not a normal way to look at it. But I can tell you, I have always said that Trump this is politics. He's good. He's learned to become a politician, whether people like it or not. And there's a way things happen politically, which a lot of people don't like, because it's not the way we would act as human beings, but it is how politics is done.
But this is going to be so astronomically damaging to America. This is going to be one of those things. There are survivors all over this country.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have been abused all over this country that have never even been able to come out and speak the words for fear of shame. True. They've never been able to come out and say anything because they were fear of being ostracized. They fear how everybody's going to look at them. This does so much damage to an unspoken number of people.
Possibly.
And aside from the faith that it's going to take away from the American people, that here we have the government that was supposed to be, I'm not a politician, I'm going to run things this way, I'm going to do things that way, sucking the wind out of everybody's hope to the point now where it's just another business as usual type of thing. This is going to drive the voting numbers down. People are going to lose faith in, even more faith in their government. This is one of the worst decisions that could possibly be made if you want to look at the health of our country. I'm not talking about other countries. Like I say, they want to shield the rest of the world from it, they can. But this is going to do so much damage to the American populace where they're going to say, there's nobody that they can trust. and nobody's going to care anymore. Nobody's going to give a shit. People aren't going to, they're not going to even bother to vote. And you're going to see this country, you're going to see everything that Trump said he didn't want to see happen to this country. He is ushering it in by this denial.
Okay. And I understand that's the emotional reaction right now. I'm, again, not talking about right and wrong. I'm not talking about right and wrong. Totally different thing. I understand the emotion, and you're not the only one. There's many people who are MAGA. That's Republicans and Democrats and independents and third parties alike right now, very emotionally. And what we have seen consistently, and guys, Dow, Mike, you can confirm or deny or rather agree or disagree with me on this. But what we have seen is when hyper emotional events come into politics, you've got 6 months at the maximum, and it's done. The damage will be done. People might get a reminder in the next election, and it's done. That's the way they're looking at the political math. Again,
this isn't even going to impact
MAGA anyway. Go ahead.
This won't even impact the midterms.
Probably not. And, well, no, I won't say it won't. It'll take off.
It will be minimal.
It'll take about 5%.
Okay. I mean, quite honestly, I don't see this really having any impact on the elections very much, if any.
Especially
plain and simple because of the timing of everything. If this would have happened 4 months, 6 months prior to midterms, then yeah, I would have had a hell of an impact. But with it happening this soon after an election, it's going to have minimal impact.
Especially if it's contrasted with any kind of good that's gained later.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what people are going to be really looking at is like 4 months or so before the midterms. They're going to be comparing and contrasting where they are at in their own lives compared to where they were at now. And if anything is better, like the cities are safer, they're cleaner. We don't have as many of the illegals in the country. The economy has recovered and people are taking home more of their pay. The tax code has actually solidified and is now operating on a better keel. People will not forgive it. They won't forget it, but they will excuse it.
Here's the political reality and doubt. You're very much on the mark, except it's not 3 months. It's actually not 4 months. It is at maximum for the average American who goes to vote occasionally, which is the overwhelming majority. You're looking at 3 months, if not 2 months before the election. That's when they pay attention. Political junkies like me, like you guys, we have entirely different reactions. I'm not talking about the emotional reaction, which is happening right now, but emotions burn out. And emotions, that's the reason why riots, on average, don't make it past day 5, because the emotion, the energy, the mood changes. You can't maintain it forever. It's not like the Hulk. You can't be angry forever. And I'm sad to say this reality and this political reality. And again, it's not what I prefer. It's not what I want, but I have to bring it up so that we can prepare for what happens next. Because this isn't over. This is the first part of a process that we're going to see in terms of what policies are now going to be affected, how deeply they're going to be affected, how will Trump, does he have an advantage or does he have a disadvantage, not just with the public, because he's not going to get reelected. Does he have an advantage or disadvantage in terms of dealing with Congress going forward? Is he now a lame duck, or will that happen after 2026, or does it not happen? That's the consequence that really is going to have the biggest impact on the majority of people, not in America and the world, realistically. And I know people will be pissed at me about this. Again, I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm not talking about justice. I'm talking about politics. Entirely different thing.
It also depends on the culture. I mean, we're culturally right now we're stunted. If this was a period where culturally we were still as the founders would call, a moral and righteous people,
1950s, 1970s.
you probably would see this carry on for a lot longer, and there would still be some emotion and energy there to actually affect some sort of change, because the outcome that everyone was looking to would be individual liberty and how to secure it. But that's not where we're at right now. And as a culture right now, we are at the subjugation citizen stage. We have a choice. We had a choice in 2024 to choose a federal government that would either subjugate us or allow us to continue to be citizens in our own country. Now the midterms gives us another battle, another time for question. The 2026 midterms are going to be, do we want to be subjects of our government on a state and local level as well as a federal, or do we want to be citizens at a state or local level? So there is a silver lining to this. The silver lining to this is that people are going to look at the federal government and they're going to remember. They may not remember entirely, but they'll remember that the federal government shafted them at some point. So now they don't really have as much trust to
No, people are numb to that because people get shafted by the federal government on a daily basis.
They do.
We're immune to it.
But there's
we don't hold our government accountable. We haven't held our government accountable for generations.
I understand. But what I'm saying is that now 2024 did something that hasn't happened in a while. Many people came together and they voted in very large numbers to try and change the federal government. Seeing that is not as effective as they thought it was going to be.
Actually, the numbers weren't that far out of line with previous elections, with the exception of Biden, and they were actually less for the 2024 election than they were the 2020 election.
The numbers, yes, but the ultimate goal of the voter changed to a more unified vision of, we want to go forward together for this goal of reuniting the republic.
Actually did that? How many incumbents were reelected?
But there was a mandate. To be fair, and now have a point. There was. Because
if there was a mandate, then why were so many incumbents reelected?
Because they were the ones that were running.
Yeah. Incumbents always, we know this. We've done the numbers here. It's 92%. They're going to get reelected. That's not a factor. That's not with the voters.
Well,
the presidency was
that's my point. If there was a mandate, there would have been a real shakeup in our government. There wasn't a shakeup.
No, because people were still hoping that the current government, the way it stood, if it had a stronger leader, which they saw in Trump, was at the helm, that it may still be able to fix itself. Now they're seeing that it's still at a point where it will not fix itself. Now, it won't be a huge swing. I'm not saying it's going to be that everyone's going to come out of their houses with American flags. They're going to march to fife and drum right down to the poll box, and they're going to throw everybody out. They're going to put new people in. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that people are going to start looking closer to home, and they're going to be saying, you know what? We tried to let the government on the federal level fix itself. We don't want anything to do with that now because it's obvious that it's beyond what the people can handle. So we're going to go and we're going to look at our local elections and we're going to start there. Or we're going to look at our state.
And I'm sorry to say, Dow.
And it's only going to be
already being sabotaged. That's already being sabotaged. We got Joy Reid, Jim Acosta, you got James Carville, and others who have already started to posit that the next election, that because Orange Man bad, you can't trust any election result going forward. This is the new thing that they're starting to put out there
earlier.
Yeah, and they're trying to now poison the well.
That was started back with the first time Trump was elected.
Well, even before that. But what they're doing now, and it's another round of it, and now it was expected anyway. But the reason they're doing it now is, again, to break the MAGA, break the America First, break the mandate of the president, not the Congress, not the government, the mandate of the president, to break that. Because if they can break Trump, if they can break his leadership, they break MAGA, they break America First, and Democrats have a chance to resurge and to continue the status quo that we've been living with for a long, long time now.
Well, I don't think it'll be the Democrats. I think what it'll be is the Communist Party of the United States. They'll call themselves Democratic Socialists, but
I want to bring up something.
Go ahead.
Why was the Liberty First Foundation founded?
To make people aware of their freedoms, the Constitution, and the original values and purpose of this nation.
One of the biggest reasons why the Liberty First Foundation was founded, okay, and what you just said, Michael, is all applicable to this reason. It was founded because we realized government will not fix itself.
No.
Of course. Right.
Okay. And the only way that we can fix government is for the people to start taking action. And in order for the people to start taking action, they have to start looking at the Constitution and start applying the original intent of the Constitution and quit letting the government usurp powers away from the people.
Right.
No doubt.
And that's one of the things that I think we have the silver lining is we have an opportunity to do that. Now it won't be huge, but it's still an in. That's all I'm saying is that we have an in. People are at the point where they're looking for a way forward. The way forward is to realize the agency that they were endowed with under their inalienable rights and the free exercise that's preserved in the constitutional document. But they have to know it.
Yeah, but people are but we can see the political machines already taking advantage of that. You've got Elon Musk with his American Party, which is just up at this moment, and realistically within the next 3 years is just a pack. This is just publicity. It is just meant to embarrass Trump. It would take at least 3 years at the fastest if he spent $3 billion and fast track this. That would be the fastest way he can get the American Party to be a real party, assuming anyone wants to be part of it, because we don't even know what it stands for. We just know the title.
Right.
We don't know who's involved. We don't know what their principles are. We know nothing. It is a pack. It is a way to send out money. That is a perversion of the system, unlike legitimate third parties out there, which I can point to: the Green Party, the Green Party and the Libertarians are the two big ones, where they've actually gone out, built an infrastructure, have members, actually have values, actually have, whether you agree with the principles or not, doesn't matter. They've done the homework. They've earned their third party status, and they're real. They're not PACs. They actually have policies, and they have people behind them on that. So
and they have a platform that they're operating under.
Right. And we're seeing this is being, so what you're talking about, Dal, I'm not saying is wrong, but we're seeing that there are people putting roadblocks and barricades in front of it to prevent that. Whether it's because you got the Joy Reids of the world trying to make people even more unlikely to vote. I forget the word now. It starts with an A. But apathetic to voting. Either they want to increase that or make them anti-MAGA, or they're looking at distractions, which is Elon Musk. And that's the problem we're really fighting against at this moment, I think.
I mean, there's going to be, you look at people that have already thrown in support, verbal support, public support for the American Party. It's just going to be infiltrated. Just like any other party. Mark Cuban was like, yeah, I'll do the American Party. Oh, well, Mark Cuban has already thrown his hat in the ring with the Democrats and the Democratic Socialists. So what's that mean for the American Party? It just means that he's going to import supporters from that camp into the American Party. That's going to dilute it. So that's no good. Then you got Pence. Pence is not liked by anyone. He's very milquetoast, and he's definitely swampy establishment Republican. So that's out. Like there's not going to be any support there.
Now,
So
supposedly, the American Party is supposed to be for the centrists.
yeah, that's what he says, but it's
supposed to be for the people that don't think that they're Republican or Democrat, either one.
No.
Yeah, no.
It's going to be center left. If anything, it's at its most mild. It's going to be a center left party, like the Democrats were. And now
again, I don't think it's going to be a party. It's a PAC.
Right.
It is a way to move money to and from certain favored candidates. And those candidates, in the best case scenario, I agree with you, will be center left if we're lucky. And that'll be some of their targets. Realistically, we're talking about money going to the mainstream Democrats most of the time, and some of the moderate or liberal rhinos, most likely on the other side. That's what I think is what it actually functionally will be. The wording in between now and then, and the way we'll know for sure which one it is going to be isn't with Mark Cuban. It's got nothing to do with people like that, or Liz Cheney, or any of them. Who cares? Or Mike Pence. No, the real point is, what is their mission statement? What are their principles, which have yet to be discussed? And until we see that, it's a PAC. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see that. And there's a lot of moving parts going on right now, and most people aren't thinking about most of them.
It's going to be FTX, but it's going to be all political currency rather than crypto. That's
actually the American Party was originally established in 1969.
The what?
The American Party was established in 1969.
America or American?
American.
Okay, he's the America, no N.
Okay.
So I know a lot of people mix that up. I did too initially the first day. But it was, and I think it was misreported by a lot of people the first day, saying American when it's just the America, no N. So he's trying to make it original. But again, if he was smart, and the best argument is being made right now by the libertarians, if he really wanted to, because it, like I said, people don't realize how difficult it is to get on the ballots. It's at least, literally doing the math, it's at least a $3 billion process. And that's working fast as hell and having 100% support all the way through, which he's not going to get. It would cost $3 billion, and it would still take 3 years. So the first time he'd have any influence would be 2028. And that would be on the congressional level, not presidential. It's just, realistically, if he's trying to build a party, it will not functionally exist until 2030 at the best, with candidates, with policies, with positions. You're looking at 2030. The America Party is not a solution. It is not. If he was really serious, he'd drop money on the Libertarian Party. He really would. He'd have more influence, and he'd have something that could be affecting 2026. If he really was trying to do something about politics, he's not. He's doing PAC work. It's entirely different.
Maybe Larry Sharp should talk to Musk.
No, I know he wants to. I know a bunch of. Have you seen X?
Oh, yeah.
The libertarians are flooding Elon with requests, in particular, to go to Larry Sharp or to what's his name? He ran vice president, Spike Cohen. I've interviewed him. They're trying to get either Spike Cohen or Larry Sharp to get all the money, to get the support from Elon. And if Elon was really serious and smart about it, he would. One of them or both of them.
Yeah.
That's how he'd be the most effective. But I don't think this is about being effective. This is about pissing off Trump and knocking him down a few pegs. And the Democrats are more than happy to help that process along because they have no functional help without it. They have nothing to offer. No leadership, no policy, no momentum. They're at 19%. Well, amongst their own people, they're at 19% likability. They are done. They have nothing to offer because they've screwed up as bad as Republicans are and bad as Trump is screwing up right now. Democrats are worse. People are lost. They're looking for something. America is not the America Party, not going to be it, not for another 7 years. Realistically, if people are smart, they give some money to the LP. If you want this third party, you want a new party, they'd probably be going to the LP right now, the Libertarian Party, dropping a bunch of money on them and trying to build that up. Otherwise, after 2026, if that process hasn't happened, we will revert back to the same old in terms of the structure, plus minus the same old political theater.
Right.
That's probably the reality that we're looking at, which I'm not happy with.
No. So, I mean, the biggest thing that I've been doing here in my area is actually talking with people on a local level about, what is liberty? What do you think it is? How do you get involved with exercising your inalienable rights? What does that look like? What's the definition of it? And the response that I've been getting is quite positive. It's just there is a level of apathy because they look at the way New York State government is run and they're like, there's no way that we could change Albany for this. In fact, there was I was talking with one person and they're like, so it's more likely that Albany would secede to Canada than it would be to actually change the state. Like that was their feeling, was that it was like it is more likely that New York State would become a province of Canada than to actually change how the state operates.
That's probably true.
So I was like, well, if that's happening, then I'm out. Like, I'm not seceding America. I'm not leaving America. So
if we continue, the only way New York can change is we have to break the single party rule.
Yeah.
And there's a few states that are in a similar situation. I believe California is another one where you have single party rule. And it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. Single party rule is always a mistake.
Yeah.
It is always, it will always fail because it's not listening to or taking in the voices of the people or opposition. It always fails. We're human beings. We're fallible. Any one party always fails because it fails to see its flaws every time. So, we gotta break it in New York. We can't have this single party rule anymore.
right.
You guys already know how I feel about political parties.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there should be any. Honestly,
Well, that's my thinking as well.
but the practical reality is that there are, and the reason there are is because humans like to categorize things. We like to be in groups, and so you're going to naturally human nature naturally coalesces around groupthink or common think, and so they start putting together these little parties.
Even in the earliest Congresses, there were, even though we had many founders, many people in the founding generation warning against it, there were parties already being formed.
Right. The Whigs were one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It always starts with, well, there's
Federalists, anti-federalists.
Yeah, and there's like-minded people, and they join together because more power in a group than by yourself, and that's pretty much how political parties start. But they maintain because of the corruption of money and influence going forward.
Right.
That's where the problem is. And that's why you need to break that system. I mean, the Republican Party replaced the Whig Party, 1850. That's a good thing. It led to, because of abolition. Fantastic. One of, not the only, but one of the major issues at that time. Economics, and whether or not we were going to see more advances in technology versus agriculture was another big issue that the Republicans were in the forefront of, and that was important. Absolutely. We need, and I think we are at that moment. I know everyone likes to say this moment is the moment, but given where we are with MAGA, America First, looking at the opposition from the Republican parties and the Democratic Party, I think this is the time where we need to see that third party come up. And if we don't see it by 2028, I'd honestly say 26, but by 2028 at the latest, that we don't see a strong third party present, I don't know that we're ever going to see it. I don't think we're ever going to see it if it doesn't happen by 2028.
Yeah. I mean, and besides the political avenues, there has to be a cultural shift to go along with that. I mean, the people essentially have to get back into the idea of being active in their own governance. And you're not going to get that until either things hurt enough where it's going to be too late to do anything positive outside of using undesirable tools and having undesirable outcomes, or you basically lose it for several decades, generations, and then we have a renaissance, sort of like in the same vein as Argentina. Like those are your only other options. Yeah, with Malay.
Well,
and Argentina, as imperfect as it is, still proves that even if you fall into socialism and communistic theory, there is a way to dig yourself out. It's just long, arduous, and painful.
And look at the devastation they went into before they went through this process to get out.
Right, but it is possible.
Well, you want to know one of the things I'm sitting here, I've been very quiet listening to you guys talk about, how do we usher in the cultural revolution? How do we figure out if a third party is going to make any way? How do we figure out how to get people engaged? How do we figure out this, that, whatever else? The big thing is people need to see a government that works for them.
Right.
They need to see a government that actually does what it said it was going to do. They need to see corrupt politicians, criminal celebrity, corrupt wealthy people. They need to see all of these people in cuffs, ushered into a courthouse to answer for the crimes that they've committed. And when you have a government that re-entered politics and regained power based on the promises to let that happen, and then you're told it's not going to, well, you know what? You take the opportunity and you blow it.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that conclusion.
And
I understand the setup.
Well, what else would make a difference to the American people? What tiny little minuscule thing, the little 0.5% tax cut, the little no tax on tips, the little, get a couple other jobs here, a little tick on the unemployment. What other major thing can possibly happen that's not a national tragedy like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or something like that, that would make the American people, perk up and go, my God, they did what they said they were going to do.
We've already had it.
God.
We've already had it. The first 3 months, the first 130 days of the Trump administration has been that. And that's it. That's it.
Now, when you look into all of the little things, let's look into the big, beautiful bill and look at all the hyperbole around it. And you start looking at the long-term effects. Well, tax on tips only comes in and is effective up to $25,000. And then it has to be on a list of approved jobs. And then, oh, by the way, it's only going to last for 2.5 more years. You look at all these things, when people start to actually read the fine print and they start to see, well, it's really not that great. It's not long term. It's not going to be codified into law. It's not going to this. It's not going to that. They start to realize, maybe it was just a bit of a shell game. It was another one of the Republican plan for way back when the contract with America. Yeah, they fulfilled the contract with America by taking them 10 points and making them a reality. And what it turned out to be was a whole bunch of nothing, because it really didn't affect anybody long term. But when you turn around and you say, what's going to usher in the cultural change? The cultural change is going to come when you look and you have people say, I have faith in the people that I elected because they did what they said they were going to do. Because sometimes it's not about making the easy decision. It's about making the decision that's hard. And JFK said that, and it probably cost him his life. But it's the hard decisions that gets people's attention. And when you make that choice to say, I'm going to run on the hard decisions, and then you don't come through, all you do is you give people a little bit of a light that they can shine, and then they turn around and you extinguish it on them. And that's no way to usher in any sort of cultural revolution. Because right now we've got a lot of fatigue in this country. We have a lot of people are getting fed up with the riots. They're getting fed up with the shoplifting. They're getting fed up having to get their shaving cream out from behind glass. They're getting fed up with having to sign their name every time they got to go get some Sudafed. They're getting fed up and fed up and fed up with having more and more freedoms taken away and people walking away scot-free without ever paying a price. If you want to restore culture into this country and give people something that they can say, you know what, it might have hurt, but it was good, then you fulfill a couple of the promises that you made. Because then you can actually say, you know what, I have a little faith that they're going to do what they said was going to be done, even if it hurts a little bit. I'd rather be told by my doctor with a horrible bedside manner, it's going to hurt, but you're going to live, as opposed to the guy, it's not going to hurt, but you're going to die. If you want that cultural revolution, that's what you got to do.
Okay, the cultural revolution is depending on who you speak to and the way they look at it. Cultural revolution either is downstream or upstream from politics itself. In other words, either politics is affecting the culture or the culture is affecting the politics. Depends on which way you want to look at it to see how that goes. But one thing for sure, we've already seen Trump is point blank, without question, the most transparent president we've had since at least Reagan, if not before him. And he has been he has kept the most promises of any president in my lifetime. And there is no one else to compare to that. He has already done what you're talking about. We have this one thing, which is a big thing, which people are very emotional about today.
It's not just this one thing. Listen, I'm not talking about an emotional thing. I'm talking about the things that last. There are still people in this country like myself who are pissed off about Ruby Ridge. There's still people in this country who are still pissed off about the shit with the Branch Davidians. There are still people in this country that are pissed off about what happened to the Murrow building. There's still people that are pissed off about 9/11, the Beirut bombings, and all the rest of that stuff. But we've never gotten people to actually answer for what they did. This is another in a long line of things that are going to go unanswered. And when you have somebody who ran for president saying, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and they don't, you burn credibility with the people. If you want to have credibility, you want to usher in that level of trust, do what the hell you said you got to do, no matter how hard it hurts.
While I do not disagree with you, that's not the reality politically. That's not. The number of people who are worried politically.
Listen, eventually, Mike, you got to understand that people don't always act on political. People don't always act on political. They act on what's happening in their lives.
Yeah, people at this moment, we have not. Our nation is still too rich, too powerful. People have too much of a quality of life at this moment for them to reject and throw that all away. It's not happening. You know what? We have too many people and too much success for people to reach the critical mass boiling point, and this is an equation that many people are looking at, because I thought we would have been past that back in 2016.
We're not a nation of apologists. We got to get beyond that. You have to get beyond being an apologist and say, I can't take the medicine because I don't like the result. Sometimes you got to take the medicine.
I'm not being an apologist. I'm being a realist in what we are seeing the public do. What the public is, it doesn't matter what they say, doesn't matter how they feel in any 1 minute. I'm looking at what is the trend of what people do.
Right. And this, you have no idea what the long-term effect of this
I can already tell you what I
going
expect
to
to be happening. I can already tell you. I can make a
right.
prediction about it. I don't like the
but
prediction.
You're talking about something. This has been something in the public eye for years, and now we've been hit in the gut over it.
Yeah.
This is not something that's going to go away easy. This
Yes,
is not something that's going to be forgotten.
No, it will. I'm sorry to say it. It's sad, but in 3 months.
Well, you know what? As long as everybody, as long as people are out there, and as long as everybody's out there saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to be forgotten," then maybe it will. If maybe enough people actually spoke the fuck up and said, we're not going to forget it, we're going to hold you to the fire, we're going to keep you accountable for it, then maybe you might have a lid. And it's going to start with people in the media. The people in the media are going to have to be the ones that step up to the plate and say, we're not going to let you get away with this. We're not going to let you brush it under the carpet again. This has got to be answered for. Listen, we all have a role in this. If you want to keep it in the public eye, you have to hold the media, the government accountable. That we are the fourth branch of the government.
Yes.
We are the fourth branch, and to turn around and say, to already pre-line the excuse as to people are going to forget, we are not doing our due diligence to keep government accountable. We have to keep them accountable, or nothing ever gets done.
We have been keeping them accountable, otherwise we would have gotten to this point
not by
at
turning
all.
around. Accountability is not by telling everybody that they're going to forget it.
No.
We have a duty. You have a duty and a responsibility to keep the fire burning. That's called justice.
No,
it's called justice.
News, politics, not about justice. Justice is something.
No, justice is about justice. And if you don't remind the American people about what justice is, then they forget. Don't be part of the fucking machine. Be part of the solution.
But the thing is that when you have, so when the government goes and removes a lot of these illegals, right? There's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen. And this doesn't sound like it relates, but it does. You're going to have a lot of these illegals relieve a lot of stress on infrastructure. You're going to have a lot of these illegals being deported. They're going to be out of the country. They're not going to be sucking off the resources. Things are going to normalize. And when things normalize, people lose the fire. And when they lose the fire, whether they're paying attention to the media or not, they're going to forget. That's just what we've seen in the last couple of decades. So, yes, the four of us sitting here right now trying to remind people that the power of government lays with you, and you as a citizen have to be responsible enough and willing enough to pursue the duty that you have to maintain your individual liberty and hold the government accountable cannot be diminished. It must not be diminished if you want to remain a republic. But that's what
But you just said they're going to forget. What are they going to? They're going to forget how much of a drain on the system it's going to be, and the new reality will be that things have gotten better, right?
Correct, because the illegals will be gone.
Part of it, yeah. So if part of the new reality is going to be to forget how corrupt the government is right now and actually hold them accountable, maybe it'll hurt for a while. Maybe we're going to, like right now, we see in construction companies all complaining. They don't have people to finish their jobs. They can't find people to do this. They can't find people to do that. All of that is going to normalize. You're going to have a certain period of pain that people are going to have to go through. And then the new normal will be when people are actually making a better job, better living. Jobs are plentiful. Things are happening. They're being built in America. Crime is low. Traffic is low. Less is being spent on schools. Less resources in the emergency rooms. You're actually going to be able to get to see a doctor. People will start to see the new normal after they dealt with the pain. They have
Right.
to deal with the pain in order to get to the normal. And if we don't deal with the pain right now of getting the corruption out of government, we will never get to the normal of trust. And if we don't have a normal of trust, we're never going to have that cultural shift, because people want this country to be better. They want to be able to embrace part of what we missed out in the 1950s and 60s. There's a shift back to the nuclear family. I see a shift right now in artisan communities, people embracing old ways and bringing back old techniques, learning old skills, learning new trades, going back to trade schools. If we don't embrace that part of the movement, and we don't start instituting faith and trust in government at all levels, people do listen. I don't know what the local government where Marshall lives does. I don't know what the local government in the Bronx is doing. I don't know what the local government in your community is doing down, but I know what the federal government is doing. We all do. And that's where we need to start to have the faith. We could try to change shit all we want at a local level, but as long as we've got governors like Hochul screwing over everything that you guys do locally, it's not going to make a difference. Sometimes you need change from the top to be the example that everybody can follow. And that's what I'm saying. If we start getting rid of the corruption and we start having people actually do what they said they got to do, and we absorb the pain, this is the strongest government, the strongest country in the face of the world. We have withstood everything that could be thrown at a people. We can absorb this. And if we have to isolate the rest of the world so they don't have to worry about their monarchies and their prime ministers and all the rest of that shit, so be it. Let them pay a price for it politically when it comes to trading with the United States. Oh, you want to trade with the United States? Hold those motherfuckers accountable for raping them kids. We did it to our people. It's your turn. We have to start with that. And if we don't hold our government to that standard, then we have absolutely no right to hold any government at any level, to hold them to any standard. If we don't hold every level to a standard, we have no right to expect any of them to ever tell us the truth. And we have no right to get anybody walking down the street and saying, why don't you get involved? Why don't you do something? We have no right to ask them to do it if we don't do it ourselves. And it's got to start with the one person who got into office claiming they were going to do it. And they have failed at this occasion. They failed at the big, beautiful bill. We've got the friggin' that asshole in the Senate who's rewriting bills before they ever get voted on, a parliamentarian, which is not even a constitutional office, only brought in by 1932. We've had 10 of them since. They have been fired. They have been overruled. And we got a Republican majority, a Republican Senate, Republican House, and they did nothing to counteract what they did with the big, beautiful bill. We are not holding them accountable. And what are we expected to do for that? Sit by like little children and take it. Enough is enough. Accountability's got to be at somewhere. And if there's no other important issue that I could even think of than protecting our fucking children in this country, the weakest among us, the weakest and the most vulnerable. How many families don't know where their kids are because they got shoveled off to some island somewhere? How many friggin' of those girls came back to the United States drug-addled, wound up overdosed in some friggin' shelter someplace, and we never know their name, we never know their story, because the government is going to sit on a goddamn list because they're afraid. They're afraid that one of their friends might have to go to jail. I'm tired of this bullshit. Honest to God, I am. I don't understand how anyone can be an apologist for it, make an excuse for it, or stand there and say that we can't do it. We are Americans, not Americans. We can do this. Absorb the fucking pain. Absorb it. Shoot at us. We will survive. We can survive anything, but we cannot survive if we sell our children out. And we don't have people accountable for it. What good are any of us if we let that happen? We are worthless. As a country, as an individual, if we let this happen to these friggin' kids and nobody pays a price for it, we're worthless. And that's not emotion, that's fact. That's fact. The nation is judged by how they treat their elderly, how they treat their handicapped, and how they treat their children. We have already sold out 2 of them, and we're on the verge of selling out the last. Now, I don't know. Vash, you have kids?
No.
Okay. Dal, you have kids?
I do.
Marshall, do you have kids?
Yep.
I have a daughter. She's not my blood, but she's my own. She's everything in the world to me. I would give my life 1,000 times over to protect her. I don't want to see another person, another child get victimized like I was. I don't want to see that. No child deserves that. And if our government can't protect us and protect our children from the people at the top to the people at the bottom, then our government is worthless.
Agreed.
Worthless.
Right.
And I don't know how I can make it any clearer to say, you know what, if there's a political price, screw it. Pay it. Pay the goddamn political price. Because as long as there's people walking around there that have a trophy in their wallet of some 11-year-old kid that they raped, then there is no justice in this world. And justice has to start with the United States. That's why we were formed, to be a more perfect union. We were formed 249 years ago to be the beacon of light and hope for the rest of the world to follow. And if we fail, the rest of the world fails with us. We can't look at another nation anywhere on this earth with any sort of credibility or any sort of moral high ground and tell them what to do or how to treat their people.
Or be the example.
If we allow this to go on, we might as well pack up, rip up our documents, and just go on living in anarchy. Because if there's no justice, there's no America. And for that, I'm going to sign out because right now I'm fucking fuming. I'm fuming. And I wish to God somebody in the comment section would either agree with me or disagree with me. I don't care. I don't care. Say something. Because if you're not passionate about what's going on with this one subject, you have no right to be passionate about anything else. You have no right to be passionate about what tax rate you're being charged. You have no right to be passionate about whether or not they're having transvestites come and teach your children. You have no right to talk about what books are in your library. You have no right to talk about what kind of economic standard is in what country around the world. You have no right to tell how we are going to send our money, our troops, our weapons to another country so they can fight for a freedom if we are not willing to fight for the same freedoms here. We have no moral high ground if this is not resolved.
You're correct.
This has to be done.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. But
I've never questioned him throughout the entire show. I've never said he's wrong.
No, and
that's not what I'm talking about.
That's where we have to. That is the kind of passion, and that's the kind of response that a bygone America would have approached a lot of the different issues. And sure. It's a prescription that is definitely necessary today, but it starts with the people. And the only way the people are going to be motivated to do this, to hold the government to be accountable, is to have to be constantly reminded that you have a duty. If you live in this country, you have a duty as an American citizen to uphold the sovereignty that is the Constitution of the United States. Thomas Paine said that no king, no one man nor many men can hold the power of governance. That kind of power is not meant for people, but it is an idea. And so when the founders were arguing this out, they decided to lay sovereignty in the documents so that founded the nation. The Constitution is sovereign. The Constitution is king because it shares the ideology of godliness. We may never attain it as a people, but it's something that we need to strive for. And the citizens of this country that tried to put that all together and ratified it, fought for it, bled for it, died for it, wanted it to improve. Even then, they didn't think it would last longer than 2 generations. But here we are, 249 years later.
Yeah.
It's worth fighting for. But how do you do that? How do you do that short of showing up one day at the places of your governance with a barrel of tar, feathers, and blackjacks?
Well,
How do you do that now? You have to have the fire. You have to be able to turn out and utilize the government, the machinations of government that were created for you as the people, and take your duty seriously. And you don't need legislated term limits. You are the term limits. People are term limits.
no, I understand that, but I wish there were even one person in the House of Representatives, if there was one person in the Senate that had half the passion that Frank has on this issue, making that passionate a statement, making the argument like he just did, we'd have a very different outcome. We'd have a different country. Absolutely. By the way, Frank sent in a message, said, love you guys. Please forgive my anger, but this is something that there it is. That is more important to me than just about anything else. Frank, nothing to forgive. I understand.
No, there's nothing to
no
forgive.
one's upset with you. No one's upset with you. Or your expression. No one's upset with that. Not at all. I've not throughout the entire show. I know people will look at me and I know there's going to be someone in the comments going to be like, Mike's evil. Oh, I hate him.
Either that or they're going
I'm
to
not
call
disagreeing.
you the ice queen.
I'm just
He has a heart of ice.
I'm coming at it from a different point of view. I'm that's part of what I'm here to do. But there is no doubt. You're well off, Frank. Mike, I know you wanted to say something before. Go ahead.
Oh, here's the thing. Okay, is the country that was founded and set forth in 1787 didn't last 2 generations. It started going downhill where people started becoming more and more reliant upon government and started actually going contrary to what the Constitution actually says. Before we hit the 2nd generation. And we've slowly degraded over time to the point where we're at now. I mean, our government that we have today is, you can't read the Constitution and look at our government today and say that they are the same thing.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, because our government is so far out away from the Constitution and what the intent of the Constitution was. And I'm not talking just the intent on paper. I'm talking the intent that was passed by the ratification conventions in the states.
Right.
Okay. When it was being debated in the states, and that's something else when we are looking at the original intent of the Constitution that we need to look into, is look at the ratification debates that each state had when they were deciding whether or not they were going to support the Constitution and ratify it or no. Because ultimately that tells you what they believe the Constitution said.
Right.
Okay. And that is how you actually come up with what the intent of the Constitution is. You can get some guidance through the Federalist Papers. You can also get some guidance through the Anti-Federalist Papers. But if you want really to understand how people believe the Constitution, how people interpreted the Constitution, then you must look at the ratification debates. That's the only way that you can actually get a firm understanding as to the intent of the Constitution. And it wasn't the intent of the framers, per se, as it was the intent of the ratifiers.
Right.
And that's what was ultimately adopted.
Right. And so the ratifiers, in a sense, actually are their opinions and their debates are actually more important when trying to understand the context of intent.
Exactly.
Right. No, I get that. But as I said, it's the same, it's that same passion. And I'm sure the debates were quite passionate when they were
Oh,
doing the ratification.
definitely. Okay. I mean, there was one senator that was bludgeoned with a cane in session.
Did they have duels too? There were like duels on the floors of the
there's
houses.
duels. There's all kinds of. I mean, we say that political discourse today has become violent and so forth. Compared to the early generations, political discourse is mild today.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was back then.
Essentially, it's just like verbal judo now, but back then it was like you backed it up with force. Like, if anyone's ever watched the Taiwanese government debate,
Okay,
have you seen that?
That's all the videos of the Asian guys fighting. That's always them.
They're like beating the crap out of each other. That was our government 200 years ago. That they would go fisticuffs over a lot of this stuff. Sometimes they would even shoot each other or duel with swords. I mean, I think there's a provision in Congress right now that they had to distance both sides of the house away from each other so that they were 2 sword lengths apart so they couldn't stab each other. I mean, that's pretty violent. You know, that's pretty passionate when you get to the point where your temper flares or you're willing to draw on somebody. So, I mean, yeah, this is mild comparatively. And that was our Congress. That's not to say what would happen in the various public houses or the various state locations where they were actually discussing politics. You'd have whole families that would sit there and fight with each other over stuff like this. So yeah, this is definitely mild.
Well, we don't even have to go back to that far even. Look at the Civil War.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was a lot of family division. Okay, where people in families were on opposite sides of those debates and that. Okay, this isn't something, what we're seeing today, everybody thinks this is something new, and it's not. We've seen this throughout our history.
Yeah.
And the thing is if we don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. Well, guess what? We're repeating it.
Yeah.
Because we haven't learned our lessons from history. Okay. And one of the biggest things that has led to a lot of this divisiveness and so forth is people not being involved.
Yeah.
Or being superficially involved. Okay. Where they really don't know the issues. They really don't understand it, but they support a certain political ideology, and whatever that political ideology says you should be behind, you follow blindly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're actually seeing today.
Yep. And that's one of the things that groups like ours are trying to educate people away from. Don't just be superficial participant. Participate. It's your duty. And a lot of people don't like that because it comes with a whole bunch of responsibilities. But it's like I used to tell some of the guys I used to work with. You know, they were people that you know wanted a whole bunch of autonomy, but they weren't willing to take responsibility for their actions. And it's like, look, you either want freedom, and so you're willing to be responsible with it, or you want security, and then you have to relinquish all of that freedom and responsibility to somebody else. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to follow what they tell you. Otherwise, you're not going to be allowed to do anything. That is where we're at right now, is that people want to be able to just look away from the political scene and live out their lives. Well, that's great. Self-determination is great, but that means that you have to not only be accountable for what you do, but you can't relinquish all of that responsibility to somebody else and not expect them to tell you how to behave. That is the difference between a subject being subject to an authority or being a citizen, which is a master of the authority, and the authority performs the duties that you prescribe it. We're at an impasse right now in the country because we want to be able to have our cake and eat it too, and it doesn't work like that. No reality anywhere has ever demonstrated where you can have the cake and eat it too.
No, it's like I've always said. It's impossible to have a government of the people, by the people, for the people, if the people refuse to be involved.
Yeah, that's true. Accountability, responsibility, active involvement are critical pieces. And that takes risk. And that means sometimes you fail. It means a lot of things, but it means most of all that you must do something. And we have far too many people who become comfortable doing nothing.
Right.
And that's why.
And not just doing something.
The foundation crumbles. Go ahead.
Not just doing something, but doing something effective.
Well,
that's one of the things that is the problem, is that a lot of people look to others and they're like, you know what? I don't have to do anything because someone else will feel like they have the duty to do something. And then when that something happens and they don't like it, then they're like, well, you didn't do anything for me. Well, you relinquished the responsibility for you to do for yourself and left it up to someone else. There is nobody else that's going to be an advocate for you. You have to advocate for yourself. And one of the ways that you can do that is by going to other people and talking with them and seeing who's on the same page, and then you join voices as advocates for yourselves. And then that builds out into a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You don't have to have a party to do that.
no,
We don't have to have a party that encapsulates a certain set of ideas. In fact, we were never, as people, the great American experiment was that we were never supposed to form tribes. We were supposed to be a tribe. We were supposed to be Americans. And as Americans, we had one goal in mind. And that goal was to take every man, woman, and child's ability to self-determine their future and to progress through life free of tyranny and be able to self-determine their future by freely exercising their inalienable rights. When we lost that goal and it became about security, it became about prosperity, it became about government intervention to maintain those things, we bred our own tyranny.
Well,
that's where the corruption comes from.
Well, I would say not all in the reality where we're a mesh of many tribes, not individuals, just human nature. Humans are tribal. We're like bees. We're like ants. We're communal. We're societal, and we have our nests. That's true everywhere in the history of mankind. That's always been true.
Right, but the ultimate goal, goal, that there are many tribes, but they all had that same ultimate goal.
Yes, that's what I'm agreeing with you on that. Yes, right. It's many of the tribes, but the tribes are unified under that umbrella, that same purpose and goal. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But we are in a difficult time. I mean, and it's getting worse. Did you guys, we didn't get a chance to talk about it today, but a lot of people haven't paid attention to Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice, put in by Joe Biden, who is a DEI hire. She is not qualified. She is not capable of doing the job. On the 27th of June, she got reprimanded in writing publicly by Amy Coney Barrett and the majority opinion of the Supreme Court yesterday. The three of the three liberal justices, Sotomayor, called out KBJ, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and did the same thing that Amy Coney Barrett did in calling her out, and again said, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what you're saying. You're wasting your time. And this is when, and Sotomayor is, she was agreeing with the majority, agreeing with President Trump. He has a right to reallocate and redistribute workers in the government and or to fire them.
So long as they're within the confines of congressional law.
Yeah. This is something that if they want to argue it, well, there's a different case. If there's a different lawsuit, then they can look at it again. But he has the right, period. And Ketanji is being an activist. Mm-hmm. That's not what we want in the Supreme Court. That's not the purpose of the Supreme Court. She's an activist. She speaks as an activist. She speaks as someone with a political partisan preference, not a judge, not impartial, not historical, no reference to what built this nation. She didn't care. She burned it all down.
Actually, because of that, a foundation is being set for the impeachment of her.
What, Ketanji? She's going to be impeached? Yeah. I don't think that'll happen.
I don't know that it will happen, but a foundation's being set.
I would hope so.
In order for it to be impeached, though, it would have to go through Congress.
Right.
Okay. The court doesn't have that authority, doesn't have that power. No. But they can actually call into question a lot of this stuff. And that's what they are actually doing.
But she has to do
now, whether or not Congress acts on it, that's a whole different can of worms.
Yeah, but she'd have to do something extraordinarily deserving, something that stands out, not just a bad decision, not bad, even a series of bad decisions. She could live the rest of her life making decisions, and they can all be partisan hack activist decisions. That's not grounds enough to remove her. She needs something else.
If you read the Constitution, depending on how you read the Constitution.
How do you define good behavior?
Yeah.
She hasn't violated
because if she is making decisions based upon political preference versus upholding the Constitution,
thank you,
then she's not acting according to her oath, which would be grounds for removal based upon violations of good behavior.
That's a very subjective criteria. Not saying it's wrong, not saying it can't happen. It's subjective. What would lock it in is something objective. That she objectively and took money, crime, influence, something stupid, something objectively quantifiable. But she is, and the Pandora's box has already been opened. Her existence as a Supreme Court justice has opened the door on expectations and individuals that can be put in, even if it's short term. We've now added a layer of corruption that never existed before in the Supreme Court, at least not to this degree, not in this nature, nowhere even the worst of judges at least maintain the pretense, at the very least, of their position. She doesn't. That means we've opened the door. We have too many doors open to let in corruption, to let in failure, to erode our structure, our foundation, which is why we have so many people who are passionate like Frank, but not enough yet.
But again, this is nothing new.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm thinking like the
Plessy versus Ferguson.
yeah.
Okay. The slaughterhouse cases.
The
I
railroad.
could go the Dred Scott decision. Okay. Those were decisions that were activist based.
I mean, they had the pretense of the court, but they were still activist cases.
Okay.
Yeah, but
they had no constitutional foundations,
There's one
which
thing.
is what eventually led them being overturned.
One thing that Justin Jackson has proved, though, is that there is an element out there that largely resides in the judiciary, much on the part of because of who appointed them. That she demonstrates that power is everything, and whether she's writing the dissent or not, she is willing to wield that power to maintain power. So one of the things that she's demonstrated by doing these dissents and being called out for them is that we can see that there is an element within our own country that does not care about the Constitution, does not care about whether it's just or not, does not care how it's going to look to anybody else. All that matters is in the end, they're able to keep, maintain, and wield power. And so you don't have to go far for an example where we could see, if you're forward thinking enough, you could see a bunch of Jacksons in various levels all over the United States political sphere and the judiciary and law enforcement even, where abuse of power, as far as we would understand it, where it limits the freedom of exercise of your unalienable rights and it takes away the privileges secured for you in the Constitution, mean less than the toilet paper hanging on your wall to them. That is the ultimate outcome of this country if people do not get passionate like Frank. That is the ultimate outcome of the republic, is if you can't get passionate about holding them accountable for the unjust wielding of power that does not necessarily belong to them except by your consent, you being the people, you in the audience right now, me, Voss, Marshall, Frank. If we can't get passionate about holding, and I think this is Frank's biggest point, if we can't be passionate about holding our government accountable as citizens, we have no right to expect them to be compassionate towards us, because power and the wielding of it is never done from a place of compassion.
Sure.
Not one. The only way that power is wielded with any sort of compassion is when the people and their moral compass, guided by a singular vision, are able to wield that in a just way. And that we don't have that right now. We haven't had that for generations.
Sure.
All that we've had is this upswell of corruption. And the people have done nothing because, why? We're comfortable. Even the poorest among us has access to this live stream, to conveniences that nobody in any other country who is subject to their government has access to. And one of the beauties of being an American is that we have the access, and we have the ability not to have that taken away from us. And yet we've allowed it. With all of the big tech censorship, with all of the corporations that basically use civil government eminent domain to encroach upon our private property, the ability for government to surveil us, the ability for government to control your purchases, the marriage, the unholy union of large corporations who are not people but are made up of people and wield power imperfectly. We've allowed them to control us almost on a micromanaging scale. And we're still too comfortable. As Americans, we are still too comfortable with how things are going. And in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson points this out. Remember, he says that even through a long, after a long train of abuses and the rest of it, there's also that one part about we do not change our government lightly. We're willing to suffer as long as the suffering is tolerable. But when it becomes intolerable, what happens? And that's where you see the American Revolution. When the last of your rights is about to be taken, will you stand up and do something about it for yourself and be an advocate for yourself? Or will you rely on someone else to do it, which just enables the government to step in and promise you things and then never deliver? That's why Frank gets so mad about this. That's why Frank gets very passionate about this, because he's seen it. We've all seen it. When is it going to stop? The only way it stops is when the people stand up and say, we've had enough. There is no more. We're not willing to give it.
Here's the thing, though. We've become accustomed to government taking care of things for us.
Yes.
And we do not want to give away that comfort.
That's true.
And that's the big issue. Okay. When Doge was going through making their cuts, and this was coming from, there was people on the Republican side that were fighting back on this too.
Right.
Okay. So it wasn't just localized to the left. What were some of the biggest things that they were saying? Well, you can't do that. What are people going to do when they lose this money? What blah, 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 blah. Okay. This is all the cuts that Doge found and was making were violations of the Constitution to begin with.
Correct.
Okay. But we look too much to government to give us handouts instead of understanding that government isn't designed for that. That is not government's purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. What's one of the biggest things, and I don't care which side of the aisle they're coming from, what's one of the biggest things every member of Congress, every member of the Senate promotes when they run for election?
Well, it's the pork barrel spending, of course.
How much money I brought to the state.
Yeah.
Right.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
I think it was either Rand Paul or it was Thomas Massey that told the story on the floor of Congress about Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was running for office and he was stumping through one of his. It
was Rand Paul that did that
through his
story.
District, and was it Charleston, South Carolina that was the city involved? I think it was.
No, actually, Davy Crockett was from Tennessee.
Tennessee, okay.
Yes.
There was a disaster of some sort in Tennessee, and so Congress of the period, the story goes, decided to take public funds and give them as disaster relief to this affected area.
No. The way the story goes, okay, is there was a basically a public boarding house that caught fire. And a lot of people were displaced and so forth, and several people died. So the Congress said, okay, we should help these people. So they put forth a bill. I think it's $20,000 is what they were going to allocate for this this deal. And they voted for it, passed it. They figured it's only $20,000 in the big grand scheme of things. That's not a lot of money compared to our overall budget and so forth. So they allocated $20,000 to help out this.
Starts the ball rolling.
What's that?
Starts the ball rolling. It's the
Right.
Pandora's box is now open.
Okay. So when Davy Crockett was going around to solicit votes, okay, he was campaigning, and he ran across a farmer in his constituency, and he went up and talked to that farmer and started talking to him, and he goes, "Do you know who I am?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're Davy Crockett." And I go, and he goes, "Good. Can I get your vote? Can I count on your vote?" And the gentleman says, "No, I will not vote for you." And Davy Crockett asked him, "Well, why won't you vote for me?" And he goes, "Because you either don't understand the Constitution or you're willfully violating the Constitution. Either way, you aren't fit to represent me." And Davy Crockett goes, "What do you mean?"
The vote for the vote
and
for
he-
the money.
And then the farmer explains that
No.
Davy Crockett voted for this bill. And he goes, "That money is the public's money. That is not your money to spend." Okay, regardless of how good of an intent you believe it to be, it isn't your money to spend. Now, if you want to, and that's when Davy Crockett went back to the house and shared this story. The thing is if you want to spend your own money to help that cause, whatever it is, you're more than welcome to that.
Right.
But public money is not money to be used for charity. And that's what Medicaid is,
Well,
what Medicare
blew
is.
past that a long time ago. We blew past it a
Right.
long time ago.
Right. But the principle still holds the same.
Yeah.
The public, the government should not be in the business of giving out public monies to things that are not prescribed to it in the Constitution. So if you're going to give public money to the government, it should be for the military, for national security. It should be for the running of the government so that they can perform foreign duties, like so that they can do foreign policy. And that's pretty much it. Running the judiciary, that's probably the last thing. That's what the public money is supposed to be spent on. Everything else should come from groups or individual citizens. Like what we saw with the response to the tragedy down in North Carolina and the hurricane hit places in that area, that tri-state area.
Flash flooding in Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
The flash
They
flooding in
need that.
Texas, now New Mexico. All of those would be better served by individuals and groups responding to the need than to the government bringing in funds. Because the people that are responding are going to be local, they're going to be flexible, they're going to have access to resources. And if they need to pull from other places, they can solicit other states. Other states and the individuals that reside within them can donate where they go. This is
I love that idea, but
this is the ideal. It's
Yeah.
not perfect. This is the
No.
ideal. We haven't had this for a long time. It started to be shown in places like North Carolina, in Asheville. And then the government stopped them. The government stopped them because they said it was our job. It's not their job. And we need to remind them of this. But people have become comfortable with the government intervening. With things like
hyper comfortable.
Yeah, with Medicaid, with Social Security. Social Security was supposed to be temporary, and originally, when it was put in and debated, they were going to make it temporary, and you were able to opt out and still be able to enjoy all of the rights and privileges of citizenry. It wasn't until later you can't opt out anymore. Society has made it to the point where you have to be part of the system or you can't
There
function.
is no spending by the government that is temporary, no matter how much it's said to be temporary. It is almost impossible to shut down agencies and divisions of the government or to stop spending chains. Think of it right now. We still have spending going to Department of Education. It's been cut down. U.S. aid still getting money funded to it, even though there's no one there and the doors are closed. Doesn't matter.
Right.
It's almost impossible to shut these things down, which is sad because we should, but we haven't. People need to speak up about that. But I did want to mention, guys, we're over about 15 minutes now.
Yeah, we're going to start shutting it down.
So, I mean, ultimately, we come on here every Wednesday and we look at the Constitution and we look at the way things should operate. And yes, that is a very idealistic way of looking at it. And, you know, Voss is our pragmatist. You know, he understands the way things should be, but he also understands the way things function. It's the same with us. To a lesser or greater degree, we're passionate about how we respond to those things. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what we hope the audience takes away from all of this is that you understand that without you, nothing happens. The government could go on all day long doing its thing and have its neo-nobility rule over us. But ultimately, you rule over nothing when the people are not involved at all. Now, you have to choose. Do you want to be involved as a subject, or do you want to be involved as a citizen? That comes with a lot of different things. If you want to be a subject, you have nothing to worry about. Just let things go as they go, and you can complain about it later, but that's about all you'll be able to do is complain. If you want to be a citizen, then you have the duty, the responsibility to exercise your freedoms and to make sure that the government responds to you and to your neighbors and to all the other citizens of the country in the best way possible that benefits the entire nation. How are you going to choose? That's your homework. Class will reconvene next week.
Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Please like, share, follow. Help us get the word out there because this is an important message. And regardless of what side of the aisle that you're on, if we have a government that's abiding by the Constitution, it protects both ideologies when they are operating within constitutional bounds. It gives each side the tools to hold the other side accountable. And that's what we ultimately need to get back to, is we need to get back to a point where we are holding our government accountable. We're here every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you again next week. Thanks, guys.